There was a time when one small island ruled a world of oceans. Its capital was not the largest city in history. Its monarch did not command armies like Alexander. Its empire was not built in one sudden conquest like the Mongols. But by the 19th century, Britain had something even more powerful. Factories that could outproduce its rivals. Banks that could finance the world. Ships that could cross every sea. And a navy so strong that for decades no equal enemy could seriously challenge it on the oceans. This was the Victorian Age. From 1837 to 1901, under Queen Victoria, Britain became the symbol of global power. Its empire stretched across continents. Its merchants moved goods around the planet. Its warships guarded sea routes from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, from the Mediterranean to the Pacific. London became the financial heart of the world. The pound sterling became a language of trade. The Royal Navy became the shield of empire, and the British Empire became so vast that people said the sun never set upon it. But the real story of Victorian Britain is not just a story of flags on a map. It is the story of how coal, iron, steam, banking, empire, and sea power combined to create one of the most dominant civilizations of its time. In 1837, an 18-year-old woman became queen. Her name was Victoria. At the moment she inherited the throne, Britain was already powerful. It had defeated Napoleonic France. It had protected its island home from invasion. It had built a growing empire overseas. But the Britain Victoria inherited was also changing rapidly. This was not a medieval kingdom of castles and knights. This was not an ancient empire marching with legions. This was something new, a machine civilization. Across Britain, smoke rose from factory towns. Railways cut through the countryside. Steam engines pumped, hammered, pulled, and carried. Coal from British mines fed furnaces, iron and steel-shaped bridges, ships, weapons, tools, and machines. In Manchester, textile mills turned cotton into cloth at astonishing speed. In Liverpool, ships carried goods across the Atlantic. In Birmingham and Sheffield, metal industries produced the tools of an industrial age. And in London, money moved faster than armies. This was Britain's great advantage. It was not just that Britain had colonies. It was that Britain had the industrial engine to use them. Raw materials came in, manufactured goods went out, banks financed trade. Insurers protected cargo, ships moved products, telegraph cables carried information, and the Navy guarded the routes. This was not only an empire of territory, it was an empire of systems. The center of this system was London. To understand Victorian Britain, you have to imagine London not just as a city, but as the control room of a global empire. In the City of London, bankers, merchants, insurers, brokers, and investors made decisions that affected people thousands of miles away. A railway in India, a mine in South Africa, a shipment from Australia, a loan to a foreign government, a cargo of cotton, tea, wool, or grain, all of it could connect back to London. Money flowed through the city like blood through the body of empire. The Bank of England stood at the center of British finance. The London Stock Exchange helped raise capital. Insurance markets helped protect ships and cargo. Merchant houses connected distant ports. This financial power mattered because empire was expensive. Ships had to be built. Docks had to be maintained. Railways had to be financed. Armies had to be supplied. Colonial governments had to be administered. Trade had to be organized. Britain could do this better than almost anyone else because it had combined industry with finance. That was the hidden power behind the Victorian world. Not just soldiers, not just kings and queens, not just colonies, credit, steam, shipping, insurance, communication, production. Victorian Britain turned power into a global network. But no network can survive if its roads are unsafe. For Britain, the roads were the oceans, and the guardian of those roads was the Royal Navy. This is where Victorian Britain becomes one of history's most powerful civilizations. Many empires were strong on land. Rome controlled the Mediterranean, the Mongols dominated the steppe. The Ottomans controlled the crossroads between Europe, Asia, and Africa, but Victorian Britain ruled through the sea. Its strength was not based on one giant battlefield. It was based on the ability to appear almost anywhere. A British ship could sail to the Mediterranean. Another could patrol the Caribbean. Another could protect routes to India. Another could operate near China. Another could anchor near Africa. The sea made Britain larger than its island. The navy made distance less frightening. During much of the 19th century, Britain had no equal maritime rival of the same scale. France remained important. Russia was feared on land. Germany would rise later. The United States was growing. But for much of Queen Victoria's reign, Britain's naval position gave it a unique kind of security and influence. It could protect trade. It could move troops. It could pressure foreign governments. It could defend colonies. It could keep rivals from easily threatening the British Isles. This was the age often called Pax Britannica. Not because the world was completely peaceful. It was not. There were wars. There were rebellions. There was exploitation. There was suffering. There were people across the empire who resisted British rule. But at the level of global sea power, Britain was the central force. The oceans were the stage, the Royal Navy was the actor, and the empire was the result. No part of the empire was more important than India. India was not just another colony. It was called the jewel in the crown. Its population was enormous. Its resources were vast. Its location was strategic. From India, Britain could project influence across the Indian Ocean toward the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and East Africa. In 1876, Queen Victoria became Empress of India. That title was more than ceremony. It showed how Britain wanted to see itself, not simply as a European kingdom, but as a world empire. In 1876, Queen Victoria became Empress of India. That title was more than ceremony. It showed how Britain wanted to see itself. British rule was not experienced the same way by rulers in London and people living under colonial control. For many British leaders, empire meant order, trade, and prestige. A powerful civilization can create railways, ports, laws, and institutions. But power also raises a moral question. Who benefits from the system? Who pays the price? Who gets to decide? That question follows the Victorian Empire everywhere. The same question existed inside Britain itself. The Victorian Age is often remembered for confidence, progress, and empire, but it was also an age of contradiction. There was moral seriousness, but also deep inequality. This was the age of Charles Dickens. His novels showed that behind the pride of empire, there were children in poverty, workers in hardship, and families struggling to survive in rapidly growing cities. Victorian Britain was powerful, but it was not simple. His novels showed that behind the pride of empire, there were children in poverty, workers in hardship, and families struggling to survive in rapidly growing cities. Victorian Britain was powerful, but it was not simple. It was proud and anxious, rich and unequal, religious and scientific, traditional and modern, confident and afraid of decline. And that tension is part of what makes the era so fascinating. Because Britain was not only ruling outward, it was transforming inward. Cities grew, railways changed time and distance, newspapers spread information, parliamentary reform slowly expanded political participation. Science challenged older ideas, public debates grew louder. Britain was becoming a modern society while also ruling a global empire. Science challenged older ideas. Public debates grew louder. Britain was becoming a modern society while also ruling a global empire. If one event captured the spirit of Victorian Britain, it was the Great Exhibition of 1851. Imagine walking into the Crystal Palace, a huge glass and iron building, bright, modern, almost impossible for its time. Inside were machines, inventions, manufactured goods, raw materials, and displays from across the world. Steam power, iron, textiles, railways, machinery, global trade. All of it seemed to point in one direction: progress. Steam power, iron, Textiles, railways, machinery, global trade. All of it seemed to point in one direction: progress. But history is never that simple. The same industrial system that made Britain rich also created harsh working conditions. The same empire that brought goods to London also placed millions under foreign rule. The same navy that protected trade also protected imperial interests. Victorian Britain saw itself as a force of civilization, but many people under its power saw something very different. This is the central reversal of the Victorian story. The empire that claimed to bring progress was also built on domination. By the later Victorian period, the British Empire had become a truly global empire. British influence reached into Africa, the Caribbean, the Middle East, and the Pacific. Some territories were colonies, some were protectorates, some were settler societies, some were strategic ports, some were commercial zones of influence. So Britain built its security around sea lanes. The empire was not only red land on a map, it was blue water between the red lands. That is why naval power mattered so much. If Britain lost control of the oceans, the empire would become vulnerable. If trade routes were cut, factories could suffer. If shipping failed, London's financial system could shake. If India became isolated, imperial strategy could collapse. So Britain built its security around sea lanes. The empire was not only red land on a map, it was blue water between the red lands. That is the key to understanding Victorian power. The sea was not empty space. The sea was the empire's highway. What about Queen Victoria herself? She did not personally command fleets. She did not design engines. She did not run banks. She did not govern every colony directly. But she became the human symbol of the age. Her long reign gave Britain continuity. Her image appeared across the empire. Her name became attached to an entire century of change. The Victorian Age was not powerful because Victoria alone made it powerful. It was powerful because during her reign, Britain's institutions, industries, navy, banks, colonies, and culture reached a historic peak together. In older empires, greatness often depended on a conquering emperor: Alexander, Augustus, Genghis Khan, Suleiman, Qianlong. Victorian Britain was different. Its power came from networks, parliament, banks, factories, railways, steamships, naval bases, insurance houses, colonial offices, telegraph cables, global trade routes. Queen Victoria stood at the top as a symbol, but the machine of empire was everywhere. Communication made this empire faster. Before modern communication, distance protected local rulers and slowed decisions. A message could take months to travel from London to India or Australia. But with steamships and telegraph cables, the world became smaller. News moved faster. Orders moved faster. Markets reacted faster. Empires could coordinate faster. This was one of Britain's greatest strengths. It did not only control territory, it connected territory. A crisis in one region could be discussed in London. Money could be raised. Ships could be sent. Officials could be instructed. Newspapers could report the story. The empire became a kind of information system. And in the 19th century, information was power. Victorian Britain also changed what power looked like. In ancient times, power looked like city walls, temples, armies, and tribute. In the Victorian Age, power looked like steam engines, shipping schedules, bank loans, insurance contracts, and naval stations. A cup of tea in London could be connected to plantations overseas. A factory shirt could be connected to cotton from another continent. A railway project could be connected to British investors. Britain was not the only force behind that transformation, but it was one of the most important. The world we know today, with global shipping, financial centers, industrial production, international investment, and rapid communication, was deeply shaped by the 19th century. Britain was not the only force behind that transformation, but it was one of the most important. Yet every powerful age carries the seeds of its own problems. By the end of Queen Victoria's reign in 1901, Britain was still mighty. But the world was changing. Germany was rising as an industrial power. The United States was becoming an economic giant. Japan was modernizing. Russia remained vast. Nationalist movements were growing. Colonial resistance was not disappearing. Britain still had the largest empire. It still had a great navy. London still mattered enormously. But the age of unchallenged confidence was beginning to fade. The very industrial system Britain had helped pioneer was spreading to other countries. The technologies that once gave Britain an advantage could now be used by rivals. This is one of history's great patterns. A civilization becomes powerful by mastering a new system. Then others learn the system. Then the balance changes. Victorian Britain mastered industry, finance, sea power, and global communication. But once the world learned those tools, Britain's special advantage became harder to maintain. When Queen Victoria died in 1901, an era ended. She had reigned for more than 60 years. During her lifetime, Britain changed from a powerful European kingdom into the center of the largest empire of its age. Under her reign, Britain became the workshop of the world, the banker of the world, the naval guardian of the world's sea routes, and the ruler of territories across almost every continent. But the Victorian Age was never just a story of glory. It was also a story of inequality, colonial domination, industrial hardship, and moral contradiction. That is why it remains so important. Because Victorian Britain shows us how modern power works, not only through armies, not only through kings, not only through conquest, but through machines, markets, ships, money, information, and control of the routes that connect the world. So why does Victorian Britain belong in the story of history's most powerful civilizations? Because for much of the 19th century, no other empire combined so many forms of power at once. But through machines, markets, ships, money, information, and control of the routes that connect the world. So why does Victorian Britain belong in the story of history's most powerful civilizations? Because for much of the 19th century, no other empire combined so many forms of power at once. The Abbasids made Baghdad a center of knowledge. Ming China showed power across land and sea. Spain built the first global empire of the Atlantic Age. But Victorian Britain did something different. It turned the oceans into an imperial network. And for a time, that network made a small island the most powerful empire on Earth. This was Victorian Britain, the empire of steam, the empire of finance, the empire of ships, the empire where the sun seemed never to set, and one of the most powerful civilizations of its time.